And we're live. I'm gonna wait a minute just so that more people can roll in. If you're joining us right now, put in the comments where you're from and what your favorite animal is. I don't know. I just like to talk about animals. Okay, well, I waited a minute, so I'm gonna get started. Welcome, guys, to this lecture, this live about self-compassion for sustainable high performance. My name is Jiggy, and I just want to give a shout out to Camera for running the live for me because this wouldn't be happening without her. She didn't want to be mentioned, but I thought gratitude should always be expressed. So today I'm going to be talking about self-compassion for high performance. And when I say performance, I don't just mean for athletes. I don't just mean for students. I don't just mean for entrepreneurs. I believe that performance can look up very differently for everybody out in their lives. And so what I want to talk about when it comes to performance is solely based on just our human experiences and our daily lives, because all of us are meant for greatness. All of us are going through this pandemic together right now. So I believe that it's important to acknowledge all of us rather than just some of us. So if you're joining us right now, this is for you and your individual needs. I also want to acknowledge that mental health is insanely, incredibly, deeply individualized. So whatever I say could be generic, but I hope that you can take whatever it is that I say and translate it and apply it into your own lives. And if you need further explanation about anything else, you can reach me at jiggyyoon.com, or you can find me on Instagram at jiggy_yoon. And if you want to talk to me privately by email, it's jiggy@jiggyyoon.com. Literally, you can't get this wrong because it's my name over and over again. So I'm a speaker. I don't like to call myself a motivational speaker. I think that it's up to you whether I motivate you or not. But I think that my purpose is to just provide you with service and compassion and to be able to help you get through life. And I've done my job if I'm able to help you see another day. And so I just like to call myself a hype woman. I don't even like to call myself a motivational speaker because I hype you up. Like, I probably believe in you more than your grandmother does. And I'm also a mental performance coach. I don't like to call myself a mental health coach because I don't actually know what that means. But people keep I'm not a therapist. I'm a performance coach, which means that I'm showing you guys different practical strategies that you can apply in order to just perform higher and higher or consistently, as you would like to. So that's who I am. This lecture is called Self-Compassion for High Performance, and we are here to, I have my notes here, I'm going to admit that because this was going to be a presentation, but I didn't want to share my screen anymore. So we are here to challenge the misconceptions of self-compassion, build a personalized performance strategy, develop practical methods for increased productivity, and achieve sustainability, longevity, and consistency in our performance for long-term success. Before I get started, guys, let's acknowledge that we're in the middle of a global pandemic right now. So if you don't feel like watching this right now, if you want to learn, but if you're not ready to apply it, it's okay. I'm going to tell you that that's okay. Take your time, do your best, whatever your best looks like for today and tomorrow. Your best will look differently daily. So let's acknowledge that it's totally okay if you can't apply this today, tomorrow. It's just good to know, it's nice to know. So let's get started. Misconceptions of self-compassion. The reason why I want to start with misconceptions of self-compassion is because if you live in my world, I don't know about your world, but if you live in my world, I constantly have to fight for vulnerability. I have to fight for compassion. I have to fight for truth speaking. And I started exploring this concept of vulnerability way back in 2010. I had to study Brene Brown's work in college, and that was way back when people didn't even know who Brene Brown was. So when I was talking about the power of vulnerability, people would try to argue with me. I have literally argued with people about the power of vulnerability, the importance and the point of vulnerability. And especially with high performers, exactly the people that I serve now, whether it's champion athletes or people in the military who are literally trained and wired to maybe disconnect from emotions once in a while to be able to do their jobs. I have had to fight for vulnerability and self-compassion, but it's been 10 years now. It's 2020, baby, and I can prove this to be correct. So I want to acknowledge the misconceptions of self-compassion first, just so that we can all acknowledge that this is not what it is. Self-compassion is for us, is to serve us. It's not against us, and it is not weakness. So misconceptions of self-compassion can look like self-pity, being self-centered, self-indulgence. It can look like weakness. It can look like excuses. It can look like lack of focus. It can look like lack of dedication. It can look like lack of motivation, and it can be shameful and embarrassing. Those are the misconceptions of self-compassion. Those are the things that self-compassion is most definitely not. Those are false stigmas of self-compassion. You know, when people say, you can watch old football movies and there are, you know, parts of the movie where they're like, if you want water, if you want rest, you don't want it badly enough. And it's like, why are we normalizing that? Why are we romanticizing this beast mode culture when it turns out that it can actually be really detrimental for our mental health to think that way? So those are the misconceptions, and I'm going to go into why. It's as if in order to succeed by society's standards, you must experience anxiety, depression, excess stress, burnout, and still be able to perform at a high level. That's how you can prove you want it bad enough and that you're a badass. Exhaustion is your medal. People used to argue with me that burnout isn't real. People used to argue with me that burnout is a lack of focus and discipline, and that it's all about mindset. That annoys me because now burnout is actually an official medical condition. People can be diagnosed with burnout. It would do us more well. I don't know if that's the correct grammar, but I think it can do us some good if we were to acknowledge the humanness of our functions. This beast mode culture, this idea of being a beast, neglects our natural human needs. So why are we romanticizing team no sleep, no days off? We kind of need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. We kind of do need a break, which we'll get into. So going into self-compassion. Self-compassion, just like I mentioned about mental health, is personalized, and self-compassion can look like rest / taking a break, honest / positive self-talk. It can look like therapy. It can look like forgiveness. It can look like setting boundaries. It can look like making the decision to leave toxic relationships or work environments, toxic situations, etc. The reason why I say it can look like that is because it's personalized and it's up to you to choose what you think will be best for you. Researchers are actually discovering that self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience available to us. Science is saying this. So when people ask motivational speakers and they look up YouTube videos, what is the secret to success? It's not, I mean, it is and it isn't, like persistence, consistency, perseverance, wanting it badly enough, visualization, daily journaling and meditation, you know, all those things that people always talk about. Yes, that is a part of it. But isn't a secret something that people aren't talking about? I believe that the secret to success is taking care of your mental health. Yes, it's about persistence and perseverance. Yes, it's about consistency and believing in your dreams. But what about taking care of yourself? How are you able to live your dreams if you don't take care of yourself? So next time somebody talks crap about self-compassion, you can tell them that by science, self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience available to us. So now we're here because we're going to talk about high performance, sustainable performance with longevity. The reason why I personally focus on sustainability and longevity of high performance is because I work with a lot of athletes, and I don't know a champion who only wants to be a champion once. When I see a champion, they usually want to be a champion again and again and again and develop legacy. That's how legacy is built, continued performance. So that's why I believe in sustainability and longevity. Yes, it's about mental toughness, but what about the mental endurance? So if we are acknowledging that we are here today to talk about mental health and self-compassion accordingly to sustainable high performance, let's talk about performance. And to be able to perform, I believe in practicality. I believe in being effective and productive. So I came up with this weird term, and I call it effective/productive self-compassion. And it can look like this. It starts from self-awareness, and then from self-awareness, you will then lead to emotional intelligence. Using your emotional intelligence, you'll be using your emotions that you're experiencing as an indicator. So emotions that we're experiencing are indicators to point to us what our needs are. To be clear about recognizing our emotions, you can Google feelings inventory. People often think that, oh, this is the way that I feel, and this is the way that I feel. I feel like this and that. But sometimes it's not an emotion what people feel like. It actually is an opinion or thought. So when people say, I feel like, I think that, it turns out that sometimes people confuse emotions and thoughts. So that's why I'm recommending that you can Google feelings inventory and then just go over the list. You can literally pick which emotions that you're feeling. From there, what does that mean? What does that emotion mean? What needs are you having to fulfill because you experience that emotion right now? So then you can also Google needs inventory to figure out how you can fulfill that need or what your needs are. Because I always say that needs are needs, like not even just inner child needs, but needs in general. I kind of reflect it as like a baby. And if the baby is crying and say the baby is hungry, but we go about changing the baby's diapers, the baby's gonna still cry. Do you get what I'm saying? So we have to be sure to exactly know what our needs are in order to fulfill it effectively so that we can just kill it from the root. So then by recognizing your needs, you can fill those needs with love and ways that can serve you. And of course, that looks individually to you. And needs can look like reassurance, reframing, self-talk, taking practical action, making a decision. But the feelings inventory and the needs inventory is a part of a bigger umbrella, and it's called nonviolent communication. That's a whole different story. But if you're curious about what nonviolent communication is, it basically avoids arguments, but promotes effective dialogue to get somewhere that could easily have been an argument that gets nowhere. That's basically what it is. So if you're curious about it, you can Google it. So then if you were to recognize your needs, your emotions, and we're talking about the self-compassion thing, but we're also talking about greatness, we're also talking about high performance, then how do we know when to choose self-compassion versus self-discipline? Because we are here talking about performance. So that then means that you have to have a high level of self-awareness and be able to be brutally honest with yourself, because people can confuse self-compassion with making an excuse. And I am a performance coach, so I am going to call that out. People do get those things confused. Self-compassion is about being able to fulfill a need that you need in order to be able to perform at a high level. An excuse is just something that you might say to make yourself feel better, but doesn't actually serve you. So we have to then use our self-awareness. So if using our emotions is an indicator, then self-awareness is the anchor. So only with your level of self-awareness and brutal honesty can you truly identify a moment that needs self-compassion. Oh, I need a break today because I'm injured. And if I'm injured and I try to go train, it's only going to be detrimental to my further injury. Or self-discipline. No, I'm just tired, but I can keep moving. I can keep pushing. So you have to use your level of self-awareness to be able to identify when you need a break or when you need to practice self-compassion versus when you're making excuses and you just need to practice self-discipline. That's truly up to you. So it turns out that this whole time you need to be really honest with yourself. And taking a break does not delay progress. That's another thing. That's another misconception about self-compassion and taking a break. This idea of taking a break. You don't want it badly enough. You're not focused enough. You're distracted if you want to take a break. You're thinking about getting water when you should be focused on training. You don't want it badly enough. You're not a beast. I hear that all the time. And you, like I said, like we see that in old football movies too. But I believe that taking a break does not delay progress. Burnout delays progress. If you have ever experienced burnout, it is so hard to get back out of that hole. So when people experience burnout or injury, because people confuse injury then leads to emotional turmoil. But George Mumford, who wrote The Mindful Athlete, he also coached Kobe and Michael Jordan. He's the one coach nobody talks about, but he's the mindful coach that coached Kobe and Michael Jordan. And he says that when athletes get injured, when they're more prone to injury, it's actually because there's a need on the inside. There's this internal need that's been needing attention, but haven't been getting that attention. Therefore, the body is going to express itself externally to get attention. That's why during quarantine, I find it very interesting that all of a sudden, once athletes aren't training and competing anymore, they're starting to really sit down with their thoughts and they're realizing, oh, I need to talk to Jiggy about this internal need that I have that is showing up externally. And that's why I'm depending on my performance on the mats or I'm depending on my medals to fulfill my self-esteem. Why is that? I think this is super fun and interesting. I don't know about you. But the importance of taking a break. Research shows that movement breaks are essential for your physical and emotional health. So if you work on the computer a lot, if you're sitting down a lot, get up once in a while, move around, dance around, go for a 5-minute walk even. That can be really helpful for your energy to be rejuvenated. Breaks can prevent decision fatigue. Decision fatigue and information overload are real things. So when people want to take a break, but they want to read a self-help book, I've noticed that that still leads to decision fatigue and information overload because we're constantly putting stuff in our heads. That's why scrolling on social media all the time can still lead to burnout. So breaks can prevent decision fatigue. Breaks restore motivation, especially for long-term goals, which is why endurance and sustainability is so important to me. Breaks increase productivity and creativity. And waking rest helps consolidate memories and improve learning. Waking rest just means resting when you're awake, because when you're resting, when you're asleep, is you being asleep. So that's just what waking rest means. But when not to take a break. When not to take a break is when you are in a state of what's called flow. Flow is characterized by complete absorption in the task, seemingly effortless concentration, and pleasure in the task itself. Simply enjoying what you are doing may be a sign that you still have plenty of energy for your current activity. And it's from a book called 37 Secrets to Habit Change Success. So flow is when you're just in it, you're just rapping, you're just going, it's just flowing, and you're just in your natural state. Why stop then? If you're the most energized, if you're the most focused, if you're the most consistent at that moment, continue to keep going, but not like to a point where you crash. And sustainable high performance hack to leave with you guys, especially during these times, if you are still at home working so much, hopefully this hack can help. It's to help you prevent overwhelm and burnout. So one thing is to switch your mindset from just overviewing everything that you have to do that day and just feeling overwhelmed. Instead, take things one step at a time, or what I like to call one best at a time. The reason why I say one best at a time is because, of course, I'm a performance coach, so like I want everybody to always excel and do their best, right? But the point is to never look back with regrets. no regrets here. And so one best at a time means that you're giving your best in each situation, whatever you might be in. And like I said before, your best can look differently every single day. My best before the quarantine might be much higher than what it is today. But as long as I give my best, even if that means just getting out of bed, I did my best. I got out of bed. If that means that I can't do work today, but I have to go take a walk outside because I'm getting cabin fever and I'm going crazy, at least I took care of myself. That's me doing my best that day. So switch the mindset to just doing one best at a time. You wake up in the morning. Sometimes getting out of bed is literally the hardest thing that you can do. So what if your best at that moment looks like getting out of bed? Okay, and then what? Make your bed. Okay, and then what? Brush your teeth, wash your face. Okay, and then what? You're already steps ahead of so many other people who are going through this right now. So that's what one best at a time can look like. Acknowledging that your best looks differently every single day, and that's okay. That's okay. We're practicing self-compassion here. Focus on one block of activity at a time. So it helps if you kind of have your day kind of planned ahead in terms of like on a calendar, a Google Calendar or a planner. Like you have an idea, a list of what you're going to do that day. And then just focus on one activity at a time. So a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, you may have to go on your phone to post something on social media for social media marketing or something, or networking. But it's so easy to get distracted by social media. Okay, so then if one activity that you have to do is to focus on posting something on social media, do exactly that. Go on social media, post your post, and then leave. Then move on to the next thing. Just keep your focus on each activity at a time, not everything that you have to do all at once, because that's a really easy way to be overwhelmed. Another thing that you can do is timed work time. This worked great for me in college, and it still does today. So timed work time is setting a timer on your phone, and it can be 45 minutes of work and then 15-minute break. Or maybe you have a deadline and you have to work 2 hours straight. Then have an undistracted lunch break. Make sure that you prioritize taking a break. That can actually only help you continue to focus throughout your performance and your activity throughout the day. Continued, consistent focus and intensity of every single task at hand throughout the day. That's achievable by mental toughness, yes, but also mental endurance. You wouldn't train the same for a bodybuilding contest and then a powerlifting meet and then a CrossFit competition. You wouldn't train the same way. So when it comes to mental toughness and mental endurance, both need to be treated differently as well. Yes, there are similar patterns, but mental health is so unique to each one of us every single day. I think it's really important to acknowledge the humanness beneath the beast mode. And since we're here talking at the mighty, I want to mention that I have depression. I've been diagnosed with depression. And I also live life with a chronic illness. I have type 1 diabetes. And diabetic burnout is a real thing. It can be really hard to try to manage a great blood sugar during a global pandemic. Sometimes working on my blood sugar is the last thing that I want to work on. But in order for me to keep myself alive, I have to. On top of everything in life that life throws at me, on top of every work that I have to do, I have to work on my health too. And if I don't take care of my health, if I don't take care of my mental health, it shows up externally all the time. If I'm stressed, it shows up in my blood sugar. If I'm not taking care of myself at all, it shows up in my blood sugar. So if any of you have chronic illness out there, I think you might know what this feels like. So I want to acknowledge that life is already hard. And it's okay to take a break. It's okay to practice self-compassion, whatever that looks like for you. And whatever you do to take care of your mental health absolutely does not have to be exactly the same as somebody else. Do what works for you. Use your self-awareness, trust your self-awareness, and take care of yourself. And that's it for my lecture. I wanted to go on the comments to see if anybody has questions. How do we get motivated? Where does it come from? I think it depends on your focus and your purpose. I think it depends on what it is that you want to execute. and aligning yourself and your mental state accordingly to that. So I'm not sure what it is that you need motivation for, but if it's sports related, I know that YouTube videos apparently work great. Visualization exercises, meditation. There's this one exercise called One Perfect Day where you can just visualize, spend all the time you want, close your eyes and visualize your perfect day and your perfect performance, and then basically live that out and then see what that can look like and start taking action accordingly to that visualization. But whatever it is that you need motivation for, I know that a lot of people out there say that motivation is crap and that it takes discipline. I think it takes both. I think it takes motivation, discipline, dedication, passion, and also excitement. If you need motivation for something that you're not even excited about, maybe self-reflect why you want to do it in the first place. Are you the person from all the Mighty videos? I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I hope maybe one day I can be in more Mighty videos. Emotional inventory. Yes, emotions inventory is super helpful. Even my own therapist talks about needs, nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, I can't praise it enough, but especially if you're somebody who's currently working on setting boundaries, I believe that setting boundaries is like the word of 2020, boundaries. But especially if that's something that you're working on, nonviolent communication, Google it. It's super, super helpful. Let's let go of team beast mode. Let's start team emotionally intelligent. You speaking my language, Jenna, and thank you. Yeah, I serve a great community of beast modes, and my own girlfriend is a world champion. So there are many times when we have to strategically work on our self-compassion as well as her beast modeness, because she can get scary. But you know what's so interesting about champions and high-performing athletes? On the surface, they come off rah, aggressive, beast mode, rah, rah. But once you get them talking and peel the onion, they got a lot to say. They have a lot to talk about. So that's why I like to acknowledge the humanness beneath the beast mode. How can you tell the difference between wanting a break and needing a break? Usually I feel as though they correlate, but just like I said, it's up to your self-awareness and also, to be honest, your level of desire. Because sometimes you might want a break, but then you might need a break. That's why I mentioned self-awareness and then determining whether what you want or need is an excuse or a legitimate reason. Like, I keep going back to athletes because that's who I work with. But athletes, they get injured and then they think it's badass to go back to training. But it turns out that if they continue to train at their intense level, they're going to get further injured. At that point, it's dumb. At that point, it's not, to me, that's dumb. That's not taking care of yourself. Because if you further injure yourself, then that means that you're going to prolong the process of getting back and doing what you love. Versus acknowledging that, okay, a short break will be worth it in the long run. So wanting a break, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? Recognizing, is this an excuse or is this a legitimate reason? And that's up to you. I can't tell you, and I shouldn't have to tell you what is an excuse or a reason, because it's truly accordingly to your needs. And I don't know what your needs look like. When people, i.e. athletes, start going again, do they then overdo it because they weren't able prior? When people start going again, do they then overdo it because they weren't able to prior? I wonder if your question is, once athletes or people can get back to the swing of things, they tend to overperform because they weren't able to prior. Am I saying that correctly? Am I understanding that correctly? One of the things, if that is true, then I will answer it this way. So there was this Harvard professor who actually has a quote, and he says that one of the biggest things that athletes or anybody should pay attention to when they go back to the swing of things, one of the things that they need to watch out for is over immersing themselves into whatever it is that they have been looking so forward to doing, because that actually can lead quicker into burnout. So right now, my athletes, they can't train the way they want to, and they're all competitive athletes, so they all want to go back to competing and choking one another. I work with jiu-jitsu athletes. That's why I'm talking about choking. But one of the things that I keep having to remind them is like, well, one, let's be careful of how you show up at the gym, because there is a global pandemic going on right now, and jiu-jitsu, you're in each other's faces, so it might not be too sanitary. But other than that, when you got all this pent up energy and you want to get back into doing whatever you were doing, let's be careful not to reach burnout out of excitement, because over here we're talking about sustainability and longevity. We're not talking about just one-time explosion and then that's it. Pandemic hasn't allowed athletes to perform. Now they can. Do they end up overdoing? How do people stop it, or can't they? Okay, so I think I understood your question correctly. So let me know if I did answer your question. But do they end up overdoing? If they don't have me as a coach, then yes. If they don't have me as a friend, then yes. And I think that's one of the biggest things that athletes should pay attention to and watch out for. Like, excitement is great, and it's great if we all finally get to train again, and we finally get to see our teammates and our friends again and just do what we love. That's great. But be mindful, be intentional about how we show up and at the intensity. How do people stop it, or can't they? People can do whatever they want to as long as they choose and focus. How can I let go of my son's girlfriend being rude to me? I'm not sure if that's a question for me. Excuse me. I'm not sure if that's a question for me, Anna. I'm sorry. I think I have my own personal opinions, but I don't think you need my professional opinions about that. So that's all the questions I see for now. Like I said, if you have any further questions or just want to chat about this, I'm available. I'm accessible. I always say that. So you can reach me on Instagram, Jiggy_Yoon. You can email me at jiggy@jiggyyoon.com. Visit my website, jiggyyoon.com. I have a YouTube page. It's also Jiggy Yoon. My name is everywhere. So you can take a look at those things. If you have any questions, if you have comments, let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for being here. Shout outs to Camera again for running this show for me. And hopefully I'll see you guys again next time.